Hello, welcome to Feedback for the week of May 2nd, 2012. Today we're talking about the future of shooters. Cue lightning and distortion. Oh. None of that happened, right? Mm-mm. All right, Feedback without Nicole. Surprisingly less masculine somehow without her here. I don't know how that happened. We expected something different. Steve Johnson, just so you guys know, we had a meeting yesterday. We all voted that Steve should wear a Pokemon t-shirt, specifically one of Nicole's Pokemon t-shirts. For the fans, he said, absolutely not. I don't care about you guys. So you have some explaining to do. And
sorry, guys, don't like him.
That said, if you do want to see Steve in a Pokemon shirt, tell us in the comments section below this video.
Maybe.
That's a great idea, actually. That's a good one.
Everybody else seems to be doing it.
Really good idea.
$500, and I will wear a Pokemon t-shirt on Feedback. $500 Kickstarter. That's all it takes. I mean,
I'm going to create a Kickstarter mirror page that links to absolutely nothing, and we will get that going. And I can't wait to see that, Steve. I'm seeing it right now, and it's worth more than $500. I can tell you that. All right, but we do have Eric is joining us on the show today, and then Steve as well, and then of course Jake is here. We'll start things off with 10 words or less. Eric, your favorite gun and why? Of any game ever or real life?
The BFG. Because nothing kills better than giant energy balls.
Nicely done, sir.
Very nice.
Nicely done, sir. Steve, what about you?
The shotgun. Because pow! Boom! Boom! Pow! Pow!
It's like a terrible
all that training is finally paying
off.
All of those classes paying off.
Boom.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Boom! Shotgun.
Way more than 10, but it's fine. Yeah. Sound effects don't count. You're right. Keep going.
0.
Jake, what about you?
Gravity gun. Because it defies nature.
All right. I like that.
I like it.
Mine is more than 10 words, but you guys remember the land shark gun from Armed and Dangerous?
Yes.
Because it was a gun that shot things underground, which in and of itself is terrifying because you don't know what's coming at you. And then when it explodes out of the ground, it's a shark. And sharks are scary. So you take a gun that shoots surprises at you, and the surprise is a shark. And that's
surely
fantastic.
this isn't a shark. Oh, it's a shark.
Oh God, yeah. There's no possible way he could shoot a shark
We're
at
on
me.
land. There's no.
Oh, sweet Jesus!
At least
it's a
it's
shark.
not a shark.
At least there's just no way it's going to be a shark. You guys will
It's
be
on
fine.
his tombstone.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't a shark.
That's my gun. But guys, the reason we're here, we're talking the future of shooters. The reason what sparked that conversation, and Eric is going to run down the news. You know, every 3 months we got to get some Call of Duty news, and the Call of Duty news did come across the table, and it's actually I got to be honest with you, not that I was getting tired of the Call of Duty franchise, but people do complain that there's not a lot of innovation. But the 9th Call of Duty game has been announced, and it's pretty different than their normal stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we expected it to be. It's kind of the worst kept secret. Black Ops 2 is the official name. It's a direct sequel to Black Ops. But what's new about this one is it's set primarily in 2025. So it's future tech. It's drones and cyber warfare and tension between China and the U.S. because they're the next emerging superpower. So it's very cool in that way to kind of go into a new setting for the Call of Duty franchise. And, you know, kind of first instincts are sci-fi, but they're really trying to ground this in some sort of like a historical fiction for a history that has yet to happen.
Mm-hmm. And one of the more interesting, I think, viral things they did for this was they had that Russian, I don't know if it was a viral thing or not, but they had like this Russian gun expert talk about some future tech that will probably be in the game that they're currently developing. He actually diced up these mannequins with this like helicopter that had machine guns on them, which is fantastic. But I think the big question that probably everybody wants to ask is why do you think they went in this direction? Obviously, although people complain about it, they still buy the game that they put out every single year. So why did they take this step forward finally? Why did it take so long? I mean, this is the 9th Call of Duty game.
Think about it this way, though, that the Treyarch team that does the Black Ops series, that's like it's almost like a completely different Call of Duty path. They're shooters, but there's very different under the covers. So with this one being a sequel, it's dealing more with kind of, again, those Black Ops and those secret missions, and it is something that will also take place in the late 80s. So you'll go back to some key missions that, you know, affect the plot line for what is going to happen in 2025. So they do a different job trying to present a narrative and trying to show off things. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the changes in first-person shooters and how they allow a lot more choice, but I think Black Ops is going in a more of a direction than, say, the Modern Warfare series has done.
Sure. And Steve, you are a guy who loves first-person shooters.
Yes,
you say,
I am.
you know, it's your favorite games.
Yes.
You're raising your child wrong on them right now.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think they needed to do this? Because you're the kind of guy that'll just buy it every year anyway.
I don't know if they needed to do it, but it's welcome. Like it definitely gives a opportunity for endless variety. Just that 10, 12 years in the future allows for an endless amount of different kinds of weaponry and different kinds of cool stuff that can go on, and I think it's going to be really cool. I'm really excited.
Did you
for
feel
it.
like modern day was just getting tired?
I don't know that it was getting tired. I mean, there's a lot you can do with modern day, but the near future, when grounded in reality, is always awesome in video games. I mean, you can do anything with video games, so why not do something that nobody's ever seen before?
Well, I think that's the cool thing too, is having the split time periods. Is that you'll get to see. It's not like a completely futuristic Terminator type game all the way through. Like you can have that future tech, your future guns, and still like sort of grounded in reality. So you have that, but then you jump back to the 80s, so you have that kind of classic weaponry that you're used to now.
80s
So.
fashion and old school hip hop.
Obviously,
so, like,
music
I can
can be a
only,
huge
I can only
deal.
hope.
Care to tell us, or maybe even perform some of your favorite 80s hip hop songs?
No, I'm not going to do that.
That's a
because
different
it's
Kickstarter
another-
campaign.
So just so we're keeping a checklist of things you won't do for the fans.
Yeah.
You won't wear a Pokemon shirt.
Right.
You won't perform any 80s songs.
Unless I get my ransom of $500, in which case I will wear a Pokemon shirt and perform Top Billin' by the Audio 2.
I love that you're considering a ransom and not just people are contributing to
Exactly.
something.
It's ramped it up a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
If anybody wants to start a competing Kickstarter to keep me from doing those things, I'd be able to do that.
It's
too.
a bidding war to keep everything away from you.
Right.
Keep all pop culture away from Steve Johnson. Jake, why do you think like you said, it is interesting they're doing these split timelines. The 80s, these are weapons that we're already very familiar with. So that said, why did they keep the near future grounded in reality? Why didn't they just say, look, we have the reality side here. Let's just go completely off the wall and get ridiculous and go hundreds of years into the future.
I mean, I think it's that idea of them wanting to keep the story connected. So, if you had an ancestor, it would be 3, 4, 5 generations into the future. This way, they're able to bridge the gap between the first one and the second one. And I think that's their big strength, is kind of pushing the story. Like that's kind of what differentiate themselves between Modern Warfare. And I think from what we've seen, it looks like it'll sort of kind of pay off a little bit.
Plus the trailer, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's
kinda ridiculous.
It's got a
Plus
guy
it's such an old guy.
It's got an old guy in it.
Oh, come on.
It's got a
Old
guy in
folks
an old
home.
folks' home, which
Confirmed.
Obviously I'm into.
Resonates.
Yep.
And it's got horses.
Yeah, it's got horses.
I mean, that's
warfare.
flashing back to the
Yeah.
80s in Afghanistan when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan and we supported the Mujahideen. So it's cool that they kind of have grabbed some, those moments in history to kind of make it feel more real. But then they go off the rails and they have stuff like the quadcopters and giant mechs, and well, not giant mechs, smaller like quadruped mechs with guns mounted on them. Stuff that we've seen in other futuristic fighting games. I know you've been playing Ghost Recon a lot.
Seems to be a very popular thing. The drone, the unmanned drone.
It's where we're going.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it already in the sky. Unfortunately, it's scary, and it's scary as shit what they're kind of painting as a picture for what Black Ops 2 could be a potential future.
Totally.
And that's the thing too. Like I kind of like that we were talking about before. The idea of this army of unmanned drones that has been hacked essentially and used, versus some kind of ultra nationalist with a dirty bomb kind of thing. Like I mean, that could still happen. They could use the drone to drop a dirty bomb, which would be classic Call of Duty. But I think that's an interesting kind of split.
I have a theory that the terrorists are actually training the unmanned drone operators right here in the States. Have you ever been to a mall and gone to one of those kiosks with those miniature helicopters? Those dudes are so good at controlling them. And I bought them. Every single time I go to the mall, I'm like, $11. I want to do that in my house. And it never works for
fly,
me.
yeah.
Those dudes are the best, and I think it's a secret terrorist training plot.
Brookstone,
Terrifying.
ground one,
Right,
ground
right,
zero.
right in front of Brookstone.
There it is, ground
Right.
zero.
While you're in your massage chair.
All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about there are certain things that you can expect from shooters, and in every single shooter you're going to see certain things, but they are adapting, and like Eric said, you're playing a lot of Ghost Recon, and there's a lot of different things they have going on right now, and I wanted to talk about more modern shooters. You can kill that if you want, Eric.
I'm getting a little scared of that. More scared of that than the
I don't
unmanned
know
drone.
what that is, but it looks deadly.
It's just a mini
Bug warfare.
tarantula.
That's our Frank Myers on the show, everybody.
Didn't even
Did
kill
we
it
show
either.
death on the show? This is
Jesus,
terrible.
Frank.
Violence. That's
Yeah.
what this is.
That's
Violence.
what changes
is.
the rules. Nicole's not here, and all of a sudden,
look what happened.
Yeah,
This is
Nicole would have
what-
never done
we're
that.
going to be killing each other by the end of the episode.
Yeah. Frank, you need to talk to somebody, man. Unnecessary.
Yeah, Frank was like
Completely,
vicious with
no
that.
question. Didn't ask
No.
permission. It's all good. Neil's still rolling. Don't worry about it. It's going to
in.
murder something in front of everyone.
I'm fine.
Let's talk about kind of how some of these upcoming shooters are really changing. I think the genre, like and the expectation of what a shooter is. Maybe by adding some RTS elements or going back and forth through these different timelines. But let's talk about the innovation of shooters, Steve. Because you do play a lot of shooters, what's something that you think really stands out for you as something that in recent years has really innovated the genre?
Well, definitely the RTS elements. I mean, definitely the ranking and levels and different perks that you can give yourself and different classes that you can take. And in basically any modern shooter that has a multiplayer opponent, it's going to have some of that aspect in it. But what I think is interesting about Black Ops is the addition, plot-wise, of choice, within the single-player thing. Like Eric was talking about.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, they showed us the game and then talked a little about Strike Force levels. And the idea there is it's almost like there are non-linear missions inside the world of Black Ops 2 where you're playing the story missions, but then you can play these other side missions that are kind of like objective-based kind of matches. And they're cool in two ways. One is, from a gameplay standpoint, they have kind of these RTS elements where you can jump into any soldier, you can jump into a drone and fly it around, and you can pull way out and kind of direct it almost like a strategy game, which is completely new for a Call of Duty game. But the really cool part with choice is that if you succeed, if you're on that mission, if you fail that mission, the game will go on. It will mark it as a failure, and something will happen in the larger plot where China's pissed off at you, or a bomb goes off somewhere, or a key character may die. And the story goes on, and you don't really see that a lot in a Call of Duty style shooters, especially, but in most shooters.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it adds that level of decision and consequence that like a BioWare game adds, without actually giving you these dialogue options, right? Like you said,
Yeah.
I mean,
that's really important to them, is they don't want to do the stop and make a decision. It's all happening on the fly. So if you just fail a mission, if you come across an option where you can snipe from one side or rappel down and take guys on close combat, you just do it. You're not presented with A or B.
Right. Which means that any normal 6-hour single-player campaign for a shooter for me will now become a 40-hour campaign, because I won't be able to fail. Every time I fail, I'm going to immediately turn it off, hope that the game didn't autosave at some point, and then go back. But that's an interesting addition. I think, like you said, they are avoiding, they're taking the Gears of War R trigger, L trigger situation and really making it affect the gameplay without actually having, the good or bad dialogue choices.
Well, I think what you're saying, too, I think that's their big way of differentiating themselves from Modern Warfare. Which,
and is that
like
something
I said,
that they actually addressed in the demonstration that you guys went to? I mean, I know it was behind closed doors thing.
They addressed. They didn't specifically show that off, but they talked about it at length, and they showed one of these Strike Force missions. So we don't know exactly how it plays off. They said you pick a mission off a map and you pick one of three, and even the choice of if you have three options, picking one over the others is actually going to be a branch that goes down a path for the story. So that's interesting. I don't know if we're going to get into a situation where all of a sudden there's going to be an ending that everyone's going to hate and they have to make a petition.
Like the good ending and the bad ending.
Actually, yes, we will.
Of course, we will.
But let me go ahead and predict that right now.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just cool to kind of have those options available, and it will increase the replayability, because a lot of people, they play campaign once, and there's really not a reason to play it again except at a harder skill level. This will actually give you an option, because you'll see villains and key characters living and dying, and these territories rising and falling. There's a larger mission at stake potentially.
I think that's the thing too, because everyone, when you say like 4-hour campaign, everyone's like, "Oh, Call of Duty." So now,
Right.
I mean, that's their big. This is a big thing now. It's at least twice, 3 times that, plus all this other stuff. So I think that's.
Does that get you
it's a nice
excited, Jake?
I'm a little more excited about this one than any previous one. Not huge. I play them, but not
I
huge.
know.
Right.
So, but yeah, that's interesting. I like that kind of RPG-ish element, like Deus Ex and Bioshock sort of thing.
Right.
So,
And are these the things that are exciting you? I mean, is this
that
what's
is
drawing you
certainly
in?
appealing. I mean,
Which is perfect. I mean, I assume that you're the person they're going after, and it seems to be
I'm
working.
flattered.
Right? Yeah.
I'm the one person who
We're
hasn't
making
bought the
this
game
actually
yet.
said they had a bunch of diagrams, and then they flipped over this huge chalkboard,
Yeah.
and all they had was a picture of you and an arrow pointing at you. And they
How do we
said,
get
"That's
this
what
guy?"
we need."
Sure, we've made
This
$3
guy.
billion. We need $3,060,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
that'll
it's
push
not
us over.
important to us. And Steve, what about you? I mean, you like you said, you will play every single first-person shooter just because you like first-person
I
shooters.
mainly, and it's weird, I like first-person shooters, but I mainly like the single player. Like, I'm not a huge multiplayer guy at all. So I'm really happy that Black Ops is doing something interesting and different with the single-player campaign, because I know that the Call of Duty franchise has always been more about the multiplayer than the single player. So I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Right. And what do you think about the, I recently in Game Informer, I read about the Halo 4 stuff they're doing. It's kind of this weird hybrid of a single player and multiplayer campaign, in that the first 6 or 7 or 8 weeks or whatever it's going to be from the game's launch, they're going to be launching these very specific missions, that you can play like, and one of you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, because I have a lot of things going on in my brain right now, mainly coffee. But essentially, they're rolling out, much like Prototype 2 is doing, they're rolling out these specific missions every single week that are building upon some larger story that can affect the single-player campaign. But it's meant to be played as a multiplayer element. Do you think like these kind of single player multiplayer hybrid things are going to start occurring more and more often?
You know, it depends on the way they're set up. Like if there's a way that you have the option of deciding how you're going to do it, then I think it'll work. But if not, then it becomes sort of problematic if you like don't want to play multiplayer and you just like single player.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of weird that I like shooters, but I'm not super into multiplayer. But
Well, it's like
Right.
with Mass Effect 3, like they had the multiplayer that affected your single player
Right.
game, and I think a lot of people were initially turned off by it, but it was pretty robust and pretty cool. And the more people got into it, the more they liked that and actually will play those multiplayer missions. So I think it's all about how it's integrated, because if it's not done well and not really fueling the single player narrative in some way, it's kind of throwaway a little
Well, I think
bit.
that's the thing too, is like, and that's appealing to me as a single player fan of story, is you see more people tying in, giving the multiplayer a story, tying it within the universe, giving it even that might not affect the single player like Assassin's Creed or something, but you're playing as sort of as the Templars and you're training, and there's still a story there. So when you're jumping in, you don't feel like you're just running into a match and then it's over and then there's
Well,
no,
wouldn't it
no
be cool if
substance.
it was all like, I keep thinking when I play a Call of Duty game, like I want to be ranking. Like I was playing Battlefield 3, I know, just still trying to churn through it, and I was thinking it would be great if I was earning experience and doing all those things in the single player game that applied to just one character across everything. And there was games that have done that a little bit, but why doesn't every game do that? Why doesn't every game just have a complete experience where you can rank up in single player, rank up in multiplayer? It's all fueling one character.
But
It all benefits the story,
Yeah.
you know.
They
Because I
talked
feel-
about that at the God of War thing we just saw, where they were like, we didn't want everybody, like multiplayer is you're playing as Spartans and you're running around, but they didn't want everybody to be Kratos. Like, and they're like, nobody wants to be Robin. So like if you had like if you were Kratos in multiplayer and like whether we had a single character and it crossed over both, then everybody has that character. It's a weird.
Yeah.
You would want that, but it is a weird kind of thing to kind of manage.
Right. Do you
And
guys
plus,
see
if you
any?
don't like the multiplayer, you just want to have a single player game, then
Well, I'm not saying
Yeah.
you have to play multiplayer, just that they are like
Yeah.
they're not. They're so separate right now. They always keep them very separate. Like they're different camps, and I think if you're going to get more people playing these types of games, they need to be a little bit more seamless.
Do you see a system much like Demon Souls and Dark Souls has in place working in a first person shooter where the things that people affect in the world directly affect you in your game?
That
or
would
is,
be amazing if they could pull stuff off like
I mean,
that.
does that work for? I mean, there are a lot less people playing Dark Souls and Demon Souls than Call of Duty. Does it work when you have all of these people affecting the metadata of your particular game? Like, is that possible?
I don't even know if that. I mean, Dust 514 sort of has that idea because it's tied into EVE Online, and it's like other people are affecting that world that you're playing in. And it's a shooter, and but I don't know if it's like you can't just play that by yourself. I don't
Right.
think so.
and on a more ground level, I mean, it's been tried in a couple of cases where another player can take over the enemy AI and start playing as the enemy. Hasn't been done very well.
As in
because-
mine,
as in mine,
What
Jack.
game
My
could
new
you possibly be
obsession.
talking about? Unbelievable.
But I mean, that's kind of a cool mechanic and a way of putting multiplayer into a single player.
This all
game,
goes back to Steve
you know?
Johnson wanting to take over Mecha Hitler with Gatling gun arms
That's
in
what-
Wolfenstein.
that's what it
always
That's all
was
you
about.
really,
That's
really
it.
care about. And on that very realistic note, let's talk about realism in shooters. Actually, one of our fans, Zabobla, says, when will shooters be more realistic? They look realistic, sure, but how about realistic reactions after getting shot? It doesn't take a full clip to kill someone. Now, I'm assuming they don't mean, like Rage, I thought did a great job of showing what a body would react to if you actually got shot in the arm with a bullet. But I assume they more like, they mean if you get shot once in the head, typically you're going to die in real life. But I think that takes the fun out of it. I mean, if everything was a one-shot kill, like that would not be fun.
Again, I'm playing Battlefield 3, and I'm only playing on normal, and that game is brutal. You can barely tell where people are shooting from. You get shot 2 or 3 times and you're down, and then you have to wait for this reload screen. So that just isn't fun in a game. I mean, if you really want there are realistic games you can jack up the difficulty level, but man, I don't know if I want to play that.
When I mean, the first game that came to mind was like the original like Rainbow Sixes.
Yeah, the
where
Rainbow
like you
Sixes
really
one.
could only get shot once. In enemies, you shoot them, they're dead. So,
Right.
but that's evolved now. I mean, now it's not that, but I don't know.
It's weird. I think that people think they want realistic shooters, but they wouldn't really like it because in a real war, I mean, how many people do you kill if you spend, a 6-month tour of duty? How many people do you actually kill? 1 or 2?
Well,
Like that's a
if
long
it's you,
time. That's a lot of hours.
I don't know, man. I envision me being Rambo.
Well,
Rambo.
I envision you being
just
Rambo.
I can truly
That's
carry
weird.
around a gun that is meant to be on a tripod and just murdering things. I mean, that's what I think I'll do. In
That's
war.
the thing, but
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like that sounds fun, but actually being
no
in a
one would
war,
want it.
and like if you're actually a soldier and then somebody gets killed, probably afterwards you have to fill out a bunch of paperwork. And
Yeah, exactly.
That'd be
Like,
DLC.
I
That'd
don't-
be
I don't think people want realism.
No, but what I do
No.
want is I know they had these ones like those vests you can wear so you can feel like where you're getting shot and stuff like that. Like that's
That
kind
could
of
be the
cool.
future.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I actually, I think like maybe last year or the year before last, I actually covered one of the field packages at E3. I actually had that vest on, and the shots were cool, but they had this, I forget what game it was. Let's just call it a Batman game, right? And I was fighting Poison Ivy, and like her like plant arms wrapped around me, and it was so It made me feel something down below that terrified me. So I don't know if those vests are necessarily the best things in the world.
I just know the Japanese will certainly
Yeah,
pioneer it.
I mean,
That's
I
for
just
sure.
sold
It's a whole
all
genre of
4
games
people that
that-
watch feedback in Japan.
I must get this vest.
What is that? I must know. g4tv.com/BlairHerder/creepy vest.
My hug simulator is going to be huge.
But they do have those. I mean, they do have that out there right now.
Just not perfected yet.
Yeah, but I think the realism they're talking. I mean, again, you can make a game look really, really real, but I just don't think it's fun if everything is just a one-hit kill. Maybe because I'm not really great at first-person shooters.
I think it'd be awesome if after you killed an enemy, you could then have the option of attending their funeral.
So there you go. And caring for their
the
family.
dream.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
because that happens in real life all the time. You know.
Because that like takes violence to the next level, where you can be emotionally violent toward the survivors.
That's
of
the
the
future.
person
Yeah.
murdered.
That's the future
That's
of
the
games.
future of shooters.
Yeah,
right there.
right there.
I like your
Yep,
filling out
emotional
paperwork
warfare.
idea. It's very much like The Wire, but for wars. Like that's an HBO series right there. Like it's not really about the death; it's about everything that goes on between the killings. That makes things really boring. But if you have the right writer, it could be really great. Also, bring Omar back. Most important thing. Have Omar in that somehow. And let's talk about some of Jake. I want to start with you because you are excited about Ghost Recon. About some of the ways that the first-person shooters are changing, you know, and again, there's a very tried and true formula that sells a lot of copies of games, but you know, things like games like Ghost Recon, they are doing different things. I want to start with that, and then I definitely want to move on to Dishonored because I think that's something that most people are talking about right now, and hopefully they'll be talking about after E3. I hope they show us something at E3. But let's talk about Ghost Recon, Jake, and maybe some of the things that stand out to you that you feel they're doing really, really right.
I mean, from what we've been playing, it's sort of has that classic Ghost Recon feel if you're a fan of any of the old games or Advanced Warfighter or Advanced Warfighter 2. Very squad based. The thing that ties it into Black Ops is this idea of future warfare. So you have your bots, you have your cloaking device, which is a huge thing in the game. That's one of your big things, and you use the drone to kind of survey areas and tag enemies. And I think that's the other thing too that you're seeing in a lot of. I mean, even though Ghost Recon isn't a first-person shooter, it is a shooter. But Crysis has the same kind of idea. You have the cloaking device. It's all about scoping out the area, assessing the situation, being the hunter sort of thing, and then attacking. And I think you're seeing with Ghost Recon, you have your squads, you're controlling your guys, and you can play co-op also. But it's much more tactical now. Like that was like the big kind of push with all this new kind of I don't know, tech and weaponry and stuff like that. So that's one of the big things for Ghost Recon.
All right. I feel like I was one of the only people in regards to Crysis. Like Jessica watched me play Crysis 2, and I would literally, I'd come over I'd come over a hill and I'd launch into scan the environment and I'd choose my way. And she's like, "But you're so powerful now. You could just run through and kill everything, and that's not fun to you." And I'm like, no. I have to do it the way the game really wants me to do it. Was I the only person that played the game that way?
I don't think so.
Really?
I think that's exactly how you should play.
I mean, I thought it made the game like a lot more fun.
You want to know what your options are,
Yeah.
and you want to try things the way that you want to play it. You might not want to run
it
in
carefully. I start playing games carefully, and then
That's right, 'cause you
halfway
screw
through
it
the
up.
level, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah,
right. I get there and I'm going to shoot him, and I don't have the silencer. I'm like, damn
No,
it.
like the stuff I saw with the Future Soldier, like with 4 people working in concert, using all the tech and also using all the strategies, and obviously it was a demo, so it was people that really knew the game. It was just remarkable the way like people were like, "Okay, you take the guy on the left, you take the guy on the right," and then they're all like synchronized and shooting at shooting at exactly the same time. It was rad. I was like,
It's just, I mean, the
I'll
kind
never
of-
do that stuff.
Right, of course.
I'm
You just
not
run
that
right
good.
into
Yeah,
everybody.
I'm-
Yeah.
Like,
Steve will
you're
be
like,
like,
uh-huh.
3, 2. Steve will like,
You're the guy who plays dunk hunt like this with the gun next to
Jenkins.
It's like, we on 3 or at 3 then go.
Yeah.
Steve.
Haven't heard a Leroy Jenkins reference in a while.
it's well
Have we?
done.
Thank you
That's
for bringing
pretty
it
good.
up.
Yeah.
It's well done. And M4 Dash actually has a pretty interesting question about the growth of shooters. How do you explain the aggressive growth of shooters in the past few years? Do you attribute it to the media sensation of war in the Middle East during the time period? Patriotism, or people just like to shoot and make things explode? I'm going to go with your last
Yeah, I think
option
that's
there
it.
if I had
Boom.
to guess.
Right there.
I doubt the media sensationalizing war in the Middle East is what's causing people to buy these games. But what do you think it is? Because we have experienced in the last 5 or 6 years. Shooters have been around forever, man. And but they're making a lot of money these days. And why is that, Eric? What do you think? Why do you think that is?
I mean, is it a power fantasy? Is it being able to run around and just take out people left and right? It's kind of like why you like playing, it's not a shooter, but like Prototype 2, where you're running around, you have all these powers, and you're throwing cars at people. I mean, that's just kind of a good escapism.
I think it's because a bad RPG is unplayable, but a bad shooter's kind of fun.
Shooting things is just
shooting things is awesome. Yeah, I played through Rogue Warrior, the worst of all shooters, and it was really fun. I was like, just shooting people. It's all
You
good.
better hope to God Richard Martinko isn't watching the
I
show,
know.
because he will find you and kill you
With a knife.
Yeah, he's that kind of guy. He holds that kind of
Get all
grudge.
Frank Meyer on me.
he'll squash.
Me again? Twice in one episode? Thanks, you guys. I personally think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the current generation of consoles really does multiplayer right, and I think a lot of people are buying shooters only to play multiplayer, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the growth we've seen is that people are buying these games for the multiplayer, whereas the Xbox and the PS2 didn't really do online as much as these guys do. But that's my my thought.
And I think single player, yes. Multiplayer solo, like if you're just running around like lone wolfing it. But when you can get in a good team or you're with your friends and you're playing, there's nothing better than playing, like having seen that well-oiled machine. There's nothing better than that. It feels perfect. And you come away from that experience like, wow, that was awesome. And I think more and more games are trying to foster that kind of thing. And that's why you're probably seeing a lot of that.
I wish I didn't suck so hard.
I know. Me too.
Practice,
Because
man.
our
You
team
gotta
would be better.
practice.
I've been practicing so much, but I suck at multiplayer. Really, like genuinely, I suck.
Well, then
at
you
multiplayer.
deploy the drone and just scout out
I know,
things
and
for
then
us.
that's-
Yeah, we'll
but
be
then-
like, Steve, go over.
But
over
that's
there.
what I want to be. Like I want to be the guy who has to fly the drone.
Or instead of playing it all day every day, you could take a step back
Fellas, there's danger.
you could take a step back and raise your child.
Yeah,
Is also an option.
That's the problem that I have with shooters is I don't have the time to devote to playing them, so I'm forced.
But
to
you can plant
suck.
him next to you and teach him important life lessons. Watch how Daddy deals with his
Headshots.
with his
Illegal for the
frustration
head.
from
You
work.
know, when I play shooters, it is actually pretty realistic when I play multiplayer. In that I get killed and don't even see where the bullet came from. I'm like, I don't know.
There's a good chance my team loses and dies because of me.
They're very realistic.
Yeah.
I like when my
Jake,
team wins in spite of me.
Jake, do you think that it also has something to do on the single player side of things that shooters have finally reached this kind of Michael Bay, Jerry Bruckheimer level in the single player campaign? In that, like, honestly, I don't really remember a lot of what I did in Call of Duty, but I do remember the set pieces. And do you think that plays into it as well?
I think so. I mean, that cinematic experience is obviously what everyone wants to have. But I think for shooters specifically, I think there's just something as gamers just very visceral and about shooting, not necessarily like, it's a gun and a bullet, but it's a way to interact with the world that's instant. It's not like you have to run over and hit him with a sword and then jump back. And there's something weird about that. Like bullets, for some reason, maybe because we've been playing shooters for so long, there's something about just like click and then it like hits. And I don't know, there's something very innate that's satisfying about that.
best.
That's what you're saying. Shooters are just the best. There's just
man.
something
They're
about
so
it that just
fun.
does it. I don't know, it just does it for you.
It's like fun, like a shooting gallery at an arcade.
Right. It's a
You know
carnival.
what I'm
it's the
saying?
carnival
Yeah,
game
It's a
idea.
carnival game thing, man.
But you probably won't catch hepatitis from your 360 controller. So it's way safer than a carnival.
Well, hopefully.
Well,
You're
unless,
doing it right.
again. All depends on whose house you're playing at,
And
right,
then when
Steve?
you add those sort of remarkable set pieces, like I love that claustrophobic feel that you sometimes have in the Call of Duty games and Battlefield, where like you're going through city streets, like scanning. Going,
Well,
oh,
that's
shit.
like the Metro games, like Metro 2033, and there's Metro Last Light, which is coming, which is a very much an atmospheric shooter, and you're like, it's dark and you're scared, and there's creatures or mutants, and there's Russians.
Equally scary.
Equally scary.
Yeah.
And you play that game
Russians.
with subtitles, it's frightening.
Yeah.
But that's like a different mood for a shooter as well.
Well, I think
It's
we were
just-
talking about. You mentioned Dishonored too. It has that sort of idea of a atmosphere. It's not even a shooter, really. I mean, you
Yeah.
have guns, but it's like sort of that BioShock kind of idea where it's more of a first-person experience that just happens to have weapons or something.
Right.
Yeah, it's weird. Like shooter's so broad of a term that it doesn't apply. Like Battlefield 3 versus BioShock. You
Right.
know, you can't even. There's
Well,
not
I
even
keep
a
thinking
comparison.
about that Fallout 3, which is not you really wouldn't classify as a shooter.
Right.
And then there's Rage, which is a shooter. Now imagine Fallout 3 though, playing like Rage, but having all the depth of Fallout 3. Wouldn't that be rad?
Yeah, I
mean,
can't
that would be
imagine that. I
amazing.
mean, my brain is not powerful enough to. But you're absolutely right, and I do think, to Steve's point, I think that those genres are like everything's going to start merging to the point where we can't define a shooter as a shooter anymore. It'll just be this thing.
Yeah, and you're seeing that in other genres too. I mean, that was Kingdoms of Amalur. Like, regardless of what you thought about it, that was their intention, is making an RPG that played like God of War.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and
Or
like,
Mass
it
Effect,
is.
for that matter.
Yeah.
Mass Effect 3. I mean, it's a RPG that's also an action game, and both elements work really, really well.
Right.
Like, there's no.
Well, on that note, Jellyfish 70 times 7, which is a lot of jellyfish, says, do you guys believe we're quickly approaching the end of the reign of shooters? Now, what I assume he or she means is that the reign of what we were talking about before, like where it's a first-person shooter, and that's what it is. And, are we seeing the end of that? I mean, every game sells more and more copies, so I have a hard time saying yes to that, but life ebbs and flows, right? I mean, do you see sales start to drop on the Modern Warfares and the Call of Duties at some point in the future? In the near future, I guess?
It's hard to say, but I'll say I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
I just because I think shooters just are the best. I mean, like, even just an old-fashioned shooter that doesn't have any of these new elements we're talking about, still pretty fun.
Right.
No, every once in a while, there's games that come out
Yeah.
that are just pure. You pick up a gun and you run around shooting people, and
Sure.
they're smaller games, but they're fun. And I think that's why the genre will always kind of last.
But I think that's funny
Even
too.
something like Borderlands. I mean, that had a lot of.
Yeah.
But Borderlands has a lot of RPG elements to it. I think that
Right.
a
But the
ton.
shooter sections of it were sort of reminded me of old school.
It's almost like the
shooters, you know?
shooting, though. But the shooting, yeah, it's almost weak. The weakest part of the game is the shooting, because when you shoot somebody, you're not killing them. You're getting 47, 26. You're getting hit points
that's
on
right,
it.
that's right.
So you're not really one-shot killing anything until you get really powerful. But yeah, you're right. It is very kind of old, something old school about it but just feels fun.
And that really appealed to people out of nowhere. Because remember, when that first Borderlands came out, nobody was hyping it or expecting it to be this huge game. And for whatever reason, that game really resonated with people. And I think part of it is just the old school feel that it had,
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, robots doing the actual robot.
Right, you can't argue it, no.
Game
Yeah.
changer, you guys. Game
Robots,
changer.
the robots.
I also think it has a lot to do with you know what you're going to get with a shooter. If you buy a shooter, if the back of the box has you looking down a sight, you're pretty familiar with how that game's going to feel and play to you, and that's a guaranteed experience
Even
for you.
now, I mean, even like Crisis 3 is a very. It's not you're not running and gunning as much. You might feel that you're doing that, because Crisis 2 there was a lot more of that.
Sure.
So I think that it is the genre is so wide, and so I don't know if they need to subclassify the genre. I think who knows what will happen, but it's clearly would be popular.
I think what's
Yeah,
funny
'cause
is
the
the more
next Halo's gonna
the
come
more
out
it
in
like
nine.
evolves, like the more like now has our RPG elements, has RTS elements, has all this stuff, and then something else comes along that's really simple, like you were saying. There's something like it's already gotten to the point where it's so advanced that having that simple experience is still appealing. Also,
Yeah.
even though like a couple years
Nostalgia,
ago, you'd be
man.
like, man, this is lame. It's like only 4 hours and I do nothing. But now it's like a palate cleanser almost.
Yeah. We're doing I'm judging this. Intel does like this indie games challenge every year, and this is the second year I'm judging some of the games. And one of the games is literally this guy. The description is basically, this is the most badass shooter you've played since Wolfenstein, and it's literally just one giant concrete room with a bunch of monsters and a shotgun and a metal soundtrack, and it's the best I've ever experienced ever in my entire
sounds
life,
pretty
dude.
rad, man.
And it looks like Wolfenstein. Like, it's not advanced at all, graphically, gameplay wise. But I played the crap out of The Witcher 2 for like 25 hours, and then I played an hour of that, and I was like, oh my god, oh yeah, this was amazing. More Rammstein with my shotguns, So I agree with you, Jake. I think everyone, if that game does come along, there's so much other stuff out there that I think every shooter fan is being pleasured at this point. Frank, stop it. Stop it with the erection. All right, guys. The last thing then before we go, since we've speculated so much about everything else, is where can the genre still go? How do we want to see the genre evolve? We got a couple minutes, so just quickly your thoughts on where you'd like to see shooters go next. Steve, since you're the one that loves shooters so much.
I don't know if I'd like to see this because it hasn't been done right yet, but I think shooters are going to take a cue from everything else and start using alternative means of control more, like the Kinects and the
Voice
motion
commands
control
and
stuff.
stuff like
Yeah. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, because other than the voice commands in Mass Effect, which I thought were really cool, I haven't really seen that used to any great extent. Somebody is going to be a genius and come along and figure out how to put motion controls into a shooter and have it make perfect sense and have it work. And that's going to be awesome if it happens.
All right. I know they were really trying to go that way with Killzone with the PlayStation Move, and I just, for some reason, it was just counterintuitive to the way that I normally play stuff that I never really vibe with. But I heard that if it clicked for you, it was really, really impressive.
Yeah, Jake, you've
Yeah,
done that,
curious to see
right?
also
we
Ghost
played it
Recon,
around
too.
the office, and people that tried it out were like, yeah, no, it actually is pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
And it actually works surprisingly well.
You haven't messed with Ghost Recon Connect at all?
No, I
right?
haven't yet.
Yeah.
But like,
That's something we're really
stuff.
kind of interested to see how they, and also some of the way that you interact. Like they have some things like throwing grenades and stuff like that for with. But
What do you think, Eric? What would you like to see happen next?
I actually like what Black Ops 2 is doing with this idea of kind of having my choices affect a larger story and being able to kind of make that. I want to see my actions have more effect on the world, and not just a decision path, but if I blow up a building off in the corner, like that will have an effect later in the game where I won't be able to go there and get med kits, or everyone will hate me in that district or something like that. I like a lot more RPG elements in my shooters, I guess.
Okay. All right, Jake, what about you?
I mean, for the next generation, it'll be graphics are obviously going to be like a big thing, but like AI is the biggest next step. I mean, we already see with Rage was like a big kind of push for that. But I think with the processing power, I think that's where a lot of developers are going to be putting a lot of their attention, especially for shooters, because that's nothing better. But like you mentioned Rage, there was something crazy about seeing how they reacted to the world, and they did things that were like not random, because that's not really good at AI, but it was like it seemed like that, like they were reacting on the fly. That just completely changes the whole shooter experience. It's to play how you play, how you approach the world, and how it feels as an environment. So I think that will probably be the big thing.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. I thought Rage did enemies so much better than everybody else is doing them right now. And this is going to be really, bear with me on this one, but it's going to sound boring at first, but I think over time it'd be great. What if there was a way to implement this in a game? If you killed somebody, you got to go to their funeral.
I've never heard it before.
What do you guys think of that?
So
That's a really good idea.
I think
I mean,
that's a
talk about like
terrible
emotionally
idea.
If Steven
resonating
said it,
with.
probably wouldn't have been a good
That's
idea.
the
but
worst
It would not be a
idea
good
I've ever
idea?
heard. That's an
You think
awful
so?
idea. Yes.
Okay, all right. How about this then? Okay, taking a step back. Killed somebody, then you had to fill out paperwork.
Much better.
now that you
Not
say it
feeling
out loud and I
Not
hear it,
feeling it.
it makes a lot of sense.
Still sucks for you, huh?
Yeah, just not.
Man, the Quaaludes have ruined your memory because those were your ideas earlier. Sorry, man.
Dude, it's like Inception.
Yeah. And now I got a Quaalude reference in. Life is good, my friends. Thank you. Frank is celebrating in the back. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. And thank you guys, as always, for watching. Keep sending in the questions. These were fantastic questions. Two things to remember. Number one, make sure you check out Kickstarter.com/Steve would look ridiculous in a Pokemon shirt, so give us money. / please give us money for that. And also check out new episodes of Feedback every Wednesday at g4tv.com/feedback.